Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast. Fact. We're going to talk about our poll list book, because it's that time of the month. It's that episode of the month.
Yep, it's our cycle has started.
Our cycle of the poll list cycle. Yep. Melanie.
Yes.
What's a poll list?
A poll list is a list that's also a poll. You make your choices, you vote on it, like in a poll, and then the one that has the highest amount of votes is the winner. And then the winner, we have to read.
I love your wording. We have to read.
It's true. It's true. You choose for us. We don't choose this.
You force this on us.
Yeah.
Yes.
We read the winner, and
I think we're pretty gracious about it.
And then we talk about it the next podcast. So
yep.
So last time you guys voted, and you voted for G.I. Joe. Yay. So we read that, and that's what we'll talk about this time.
Not just G.I. Joe, Melanie.
No.
Marvel, classic Marvel G.I. Joe.
As reprinted by IDW is the version we read. But yeah.
And next time we'll talk about whoever won today, which is...
It is Blood Realm, which we kind of talked about last time.
Oh.
It came out of nowhere, and it's leading. Blood Realm is a independent comic.
Mm-hmm. It's called Blood Realm, though.
It looks interesting, and it wins with 26% of the vote. Closely followed by Outcast by Robert Kirkman, who we've read some Kirkman things before.
He's done a couple things people know.
Yeah, some things that people like even.
I think that I like the suggestions that are coming out from our people. Good job, people.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
And we've got a lot of DC and Marvel that's still on the list, and it's just edged them out. Like all the indie stuff is still leading. So
yeah, Blood Realm really surprised me because it was new, and it just popped up on the list and shot to the top. So
thanks.
We like that kind of trickery. I know there's some kind of trickery
there's
there.
Chicanery about lurking.
We're all for it.
Yep, go for it.
Stuff the ballot box.
If you can get around the very few restrictions on voting, fine. I'm fine with it. It's time for some G.I. Joe talk.
Yep.
Right.
There were toys that boys had that were boy Barbies. That's how I thought of them all my life.
They were, especially in the beginning. They were. Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Yep.
How can we sell this toy to boys? It's a soldier.
Yeah.
Yep. Give it muscles and a gun.
Muscles and a gun.
Then what'd they do? They rebooted it. So is G.I. Joe like the original reboot?
Maybe.
Because what possibly. They did was then they were like, oh, these aren't selling as well anymore because they're like Barbie. So now we're going to make them smaller. We're going to make them completely out of plastic. We're going to give them a different story. We're going to pit them up against a fictional terrorist group. And
Cobra Kai.
The Cobra Kai, yeah. Speaking of the 80s, yeah. And yeah, so then we have G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, kind of as a subtitle to the new G.I. Joe.
So this was published by Marvel Comics.
Mm-hmm.
The original series ran from 1982. So what we read came out the year me and Melanie
were born.
From 1982 to 1994, obviously based on Hasbro's toy line. And specifically what we read was this was all written by Larry Hama, right?
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah. Hama. He's credited for that early run. So we read issues 1 through 5 of that run.
Yeah, we read issues 1 through 5, which were collected. You can get it from IDW, like Jesse said. What was the title? Classic G.I. Joe? Or?
I believe it was Classic G.I. Joe, or at least that's what it looks like on the cover there.
Yeah, volume 1, which I think collects on like 10 issues or something, right? Like,
yeah.
It's beefy.
I think it was another 100 issues or 100 pages that we could have read, but
it felt like another 100 issues.
Well, each issue in those early ones were a story. So like we essentially read 5 different story arcs.
Yeah, before really diving into anything like kind of through line plot lines. They were all 5 standalone stories that we read. You know, the 80s comics, like you got some bang for your buck. There were pages and words and lots of them.
Yep.
Lots of
Even
them.
their ads were like phone book style, you know, like there was like a ton of ads back then.
And lots of redundancy.
Well, yeah.
Lots of redundancy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The first ASAP as soon as possible. Really? You're gonna say it right after you say it. Come on.
Yeah.
They did that several times.
I guess we should start how we always start. Melanie,
Yeah.
had you heard of this before? What were your thoughts going in?
Yeah, I'd heard of it vaguely,
Okay.
and I thought this is gonna suck.
Okay. I mean, I've never read any of the G.I. Joe comics. Obviously, I know G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Like, it's, I'm prime age. The cartoon. It was marketed to me as a child quite heavily, along with all the 80s toy properties.
Mm.
And I was curious going into this.
Mm.
I wouldn't say I was excited. G.I. Joe is not a thing I search out. But I was curious, especially since this is a fairly well-regarded series, actually. So how about you, Jesse?
I heard of it, yeah. That's a true statement.
You never read any of the classic?
No,
G.I. Joe stuff?
I had. In fact, at a certain point, I believe they would package comics. I'm trying to remember if it was Walmart that would do it, where they would have a package of just mishmash comics, right? Mm-hmm. And you could get X Factor in there or whatever, and it was all Marvel properties. And they'd have some G.I. Joe special missions comics thrown in there. So I had read some G.I. Joe comics, and I remember liking them and thinking they were pretty well written. So I had at least dipped my toe into the comic universe of G.I. Joe, but it was also very similar to the cartoon series at the point I was reading. I feel like what we are reading is Wave 1 G.I. Joe, and there's just kind of a handful of characters, which is kind of interesting in a different way. But yeah, I don't think that I've ever started at issue 1 and read, from the beginning. But yes, I had read a few.
So I think in approaching this, I am kind of excited for this conversation because and we could talk about the individual stories a little bit that we read. But, we don't, there's not the through line. We read 5 standalone stories, so we don't have to get bogged down in the plot details that I'm sure listeners love to hear us do. But I'm kind of excited for the larger conversation about G.I. Joe as a comic book, the whole toy thing, and Larry Hama. But I'll say this, what we read, issues 1 through 5, has, if you view it as a problem, it just depends on your point of view. It has some of the problems I might have expected. It's written for kids. Right. And I think that's where some of that redundancy, Melanie.
But sometimes it doesn't seem like it is. I mean, I guess it depends on the time frame too, maybe. Because in the 80s, it's okay for them to have somebody shoot somebody in the head.
Yeah.
But nowadays, they would not allow that in a made for children, thing.
Well, so I think that gets into why something like this is remembered, and why Larry Hama got he got such a good reputation, because he'd be handed these kind of crap properties. Nobody wanted to write, Hasbro would come to Marvel. It's hey, let's work out a deal. We want you to make a comic book on this toy. You're marketing this toy for us, basically. You selling this toy to kids for us.
Yeah.
Most writers don't want to pull up that job. They don't want that. But Larry Hama could take those properties and actually turn out something that people are oh, this is kind of good, Mm-hmm. You could tell where it is still written for kids, I said, in those redundancy, but I think that's also where you're kind of getting it doesn't necessarily seem like it's for kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because there's definitely a lot of, I don't know, there's detail put into it.
Right.
And sometimes you can tell it's I don't know Larry. I should have done some more research on the guy. I don't know his background. I don't know if he has any kind of military background. But there's definitely times when Wikipedia wasn't a thing, but you could tell he cracked open an encyclopedia, or he talked to a military guy, or the modern equivalent. You could tell when he was looking up Wikipedia, because they'd call out certain pieces of machinery by name, or it's the Joes together in a group. They'd have no reason to say the full name out loud. Uh-huh. They work with this machinery. They know what it is. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of name dropping military stuff.
Well, I guess you don't get lost. You don't have to know all this stuff, because partly that's part of the problem, because like Mel was saying, yeah, they're redundant on some things, but at the same time, they cover the bases enough that you don't have to be a military egghead to understand what they're talking about. And to get the feel that they're doing kind of realistic military stuff, even though they're a super hyperbolic military group.
Yeah. And that's where I feel like for me, like the 80s-ness of it and the written for to be sold to kids is obvious because
Like the jetpack. A
They
guy
kinda
flying
don't-
around in a jetpack with a flamethrower.
Heck yeah.
That is not feasible. But it's
and not smart
the 80s
even,
kids
yeah.
all gonna love it.
Yeah. Man, that is super dangerous. Wow.
Yeah, it is.
I just had an epiphany. It sounds super awesome, but it's like, there is no way you could pay me enough money to do that.
Right?
but it sounds super
It
awesome.
sounds awesome.
Exactly.
Like, that's super hardcore.
Reading the first issue, I was kind of like, okay, well, this is about what I expected.
Yeah.
It's not terrible. There's a lot of action. A little less so in the later issues, but there's a lot of action. I was like, whoa, I didn't expect this to be so like action packed, but I was, not really on board. The next couple of stories, I was kind of on board. I'm like, okay, I'm getting it. I see what people latch onto because occasionally there's just some cool stuff. Like
Right.
I was telling Melanie, we were talking about it a little bit yesterday, and I was like, you could tell the characters that, there's definitely characters they were probably like, focus on this guy. I think Larry Hama liked Snake Eyes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
'Cause Snake Eyes is awesome. He writes him like there's some horrible clunkiness around the fact that he doesn't talk, but like he makes Snake Eyes just the baddest mofo.
Oh, for sure.
Like he's
He's got a second hidden clip.
I wonder, like, was he ever supposed to be as cool as he winds up being? Like,
that's
was
the
he
thing.
just
Like
a
I think Larry
character?
Hama was just like, I think he was like, he had enough mystery and I think he captured Larry Hama's imagination enough where he's like, yeah, this guy, I could do something cool with this guy.
Right.
Whereas opposed to like, you got strong guy and guy with bubble gum.
Breaker.
And,
Yeah. I've been busting
and-
Breaker's chops on our Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, why? Why is his gimmick bubblegum? I don't
You got
understand.
blonde guy.
Blonde
And
guy.
then you
yeah.
got Snake Eyes, who you can never see his face. Why? I don't know.
Well, you can.
He doesn't talk.
Some people can, but then they're like, "Oh God, that face."
He's always, yeah.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's Snake Eyes is cool and he makes him cool. And I'm okay. I'm going to have to, I'll find it because there's one line that got a like audible reaction from me where I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. I'll dig it up. But at a certain point, yeah, I was kind of on board. It's still cheesy. And there's still points where it reminds me, it's like, oh yeah, this isn't written for me. This is written for me in the 1980s.
Right.
You know? And not even really me, because I was never really into the G.I. Joe military guys. But
Kids of the 80s.
it was for kids and I was a kid of the 80s, but I was more like Transformers. Like even then I like the sci-fi stuff. I don't care about the military stuff.
Yeah.
I like the weird gimmicky stuff, of G.I. Joe. The reason that I would key into it was the weird sci-fi gimmicky stuff, like you have a guy that's like, that's his whole thing is he talks in rhymes all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, that whole jetpack thing, like this is super soldier kind of stuff.
And the giant robot.
Yeah. That was
Issue.
fun.
Yeah.
Dumb, but
That's
fun.
like classic. Yeah, that was dumb. That was one of the ones where it reminds me like, oh yeah, this is like Saturday morning cartoon stuff.
Oh yeah.
But it reminded me of, now these didn't come out when I was a kid. These are older, but I'd go to the library when I was younger and look up like the books that were like the history of Batman and collections of old Batman comics and stuff.
Right.
And I love the old Batman stuff where they do like the diagram or the side, the cutout or the side view of the Bat Cave with all the different levels. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
here's his bat tanks and all his equipment and on this level and this.
Yeah.
And the robot one, they didn't really dive into it that deep, but they had the different levels of like
Yeah.
the Joe command, or the G.I. Joe. What do they call it?
Was it the
What-
hub? The
Command
center?
Yeah. And they had the cut side view. And I was like, that appealed to me there. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love that as a kid.
Well, so then you like the cards that came on the back of a G.I. Joe where you had like their specialty and their secondary skill or whatever.
I think I would like that. I don't remember having many G.I. Joes, but I would like that.
I had a Barbie.
You had a Barbie?
I did.
Well, sure.
But I only had one.
Just one?
Yeah, I only had one.
Huh.
But anyway, but I would take it with me to go play with my friends.
Oh, okay. That's all right. It was like your Barbie
Yes.
didn't have any friends, but if you took it to play with your friends, then
Yeah, that's why I had it in the first place.
Its friends were your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was fun. But I didn't never want to have stats for it. That's weird. That's a boy thing, I think.
That is like a boy thing. And it makes sense that they would do that because it's like baseball cards and all that.
Yeah, I guess.
Which is about players with stats and different junk. Yeah.
Right.
That reminds me of my neighbor's brother collected Garbage Pail Kid cards.
Uh-huh.
I think he had baseball cards too, but I never looked at those. I always looked at the Garbage Pail Kid ones, and I'm like, I've never seen any of these dolls. But it's because they weren't real.
Right. They were kind of the parody on Cabbage Patch Kids.
On the couch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had a Cabbage Patch Kid.
Oh yeah.
Just one, but still. I had it.
There's weird phases in toys, which I mean this kind of relates to G.I. Joe, but it's like Cabbage Patch Kids. They were so big at one point that it was like it crossed gender boundaries, even where it's like, oh no, it's cool. I got a Cabbage Patch Kid. He's got completely camouflage though. He's an army guy.
Yeah,
my Cabbage Patch Kid is.
Yeah, my sister had a boy Cabbage Patch too. Well, she had two. She had a girl and she had a boy, but the boy was bald, and I was like, I can't even tell if it's a boy or a girl when it's bald because maybe it's just a baby that doesn't have enough hair yet. Anyway,
if you're going to be a boy and have a Cabbage Patch Kid, it's got to be an army man.
Oh, for sure.
Your Cabbage Patch Kid needs to be able to blow another Cabbage Patch Kid's face off with an AK.
Yeah, someday that Cabbage Patch Kid could be a G.I. Joe.
Someday.
Okay, I can't find the line, but there was a bit about they were like gathering up the defeated Cobra guys, and there was a bit about like, they're like taking stock of like the injured and stuff. And
oh yeah, it's at the beginning of the robot episode, right?
Is it? Okay, I was trying to find it in there and I couldn't find
it. See, I know G.I. Joe is a cartoon, so I mean, like that's where most of my background is. So I was like, these are episodes. Yeah, they are. Except these are actually really maybe better than the episodes were.
Oh, I would definitely. That's a good point right there.
The one that seemed the realest to me, the one that I was like, I don't know that they should have this in a kid's book, was the what do you call it?
The paramilitary group?
Yes, that one. But that might have more to do with the current social climate too than
a little bit, and some of the stuff that happened since, like in between then and now, is like the whole Waco thing and the current. Yeah, you're right. The current political climate. Militias. Like, no, it hits on a militia almost in a realistic way, but also super over the top where they've got like stealth bombers and nukes and stuff in Montana. Like I was telling you, Jesse, this has a quality to it that has something. There has something to the writing that elevates it beyond, what would typically hit a 80s Saturday morning cartoon.
Right.
Because if you look at the general basics, most of this, you got the robot issue, and they're ridiculous. The Cobra Commander's ridiculous, but like there's a little extra in the writing here. Like he goes that little extra to make Snake Eyes super cool, or to put that little extra attention into weird details that don't matter, like the military equipment and stuff like that.
We're gonna start this giant robot on fire, but he's so bad that he can just keep walking while he's on fire.
Yeah, like I just feel like there's a little extra something in it that
I found it
is decent. Okay,
the very first page of the Trojan Gambit, like the name, the title page, at the very bottom it says, "Yes, sir. A half dozen Cobra troopers thought they had old Snake Eyes disarmed. Shoot, General. He shouldn't be allowed to carry that thing in his boot. It's got to be against the Geneva Convention."
That's it. That's it.
Oh yeah, it is so literally great. The first page. Yeah. Okay.
It's so great. Just like that's part of what made it so great is,
you don't even know what it is, but you're like, oh snap.
Yeah.
What did he have?
And the guy doesn't even have to ask. He's like, oh, he should be allowed to carry that thing.
Yeah. Violating the Geneva Convention.
He should be up for war crimes just for having it.
Exactly. Like it's so good. That it's that kind of thing that I appreciated here.
Yeah.
That said, there is a lot of like clunkiness, even around Snake Eyes. It does not handle the fact that he doesn't talk very well. There's one panel in the snow one with the Eskimo.
Oh yeah.
There's one panel where Snake Eyes is like doing something, and the balloon from one of the other Joes is, "Hey, look, what's Snake Eyes doing?" We get it.
Mhm.
And then the next panel is him, like somebody saying, "Oh, he's grabbing this and this and this," while it's showing us, and it's like, you don't have to do that, man.
But there was the good one in one of them. I don't remember which one, where she's like, "What do you think, Snake Eyes?" And then there's a word bubble coming up from him with parentheses and nothing in between.
Uh-huh.
And then they were like, "Oh, okay," and like he
Yeah,
had
that's
actually
true.
said anything.
That's
That was
true.
fun.
It's like they couldn't decide if he was mute or not.
I had beef with one other part. How are you going to find out that there's a parade and then 10 minutes later you have a freaking float and a baton twirling band of, assassins ready to go in uniform?
And how are you just happen to have your secret Cobra Command underneath the benches?
Yeah,
where,
how could they not
Yeah,
hear them?
yeah.
They had some TARDIS technology there, I think, because like, what?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
little
It was-
command unit thing where they were at looked way bigger.
I found I was not as I think the tank one was my least favorite. I was not super
Yeah.
fond of the tank one.
Right.
I agree.
I liked it, but not for the right reasons. I just
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just dig that stuff. That's stupid.
And it was. Also, the stories before that, they're okay. It's like, okay, the Joes are awesome. They're the best team.
Was it the paramilitary group where they were like, "Man, we really have to pretend to suck.
Yeah.
These guys
Yeah,
are
we gotta
so
hold
bad
back."
that we really have to hold back, and we're still winning."
Although they got caught. They
Yeah.
tripped. They'll do some stupid stuff sometimes. And the malicious group or the militia group or whatever it was, like
Yeah.
that was a little weird. The fact that was in Montana, they had nukes. They were going to blow up, explode a nuke in Montana. I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. Like the tank one is ridiculous. They got dudes at rocket launchers chasing a tank around. What city was it?
Central Park, man.
Around New York in rush hour traffic. Like, and this is all going down. And so I guess in a way, part of it sparked my imagination because I'm reading it and I'm just like, what if?
Oh God!
Like, what if
Oh, my
that was
God.
the country this
We
was?
would
Like,
be
I mean,
talking
you know,
about that in the news forever.
Yeah. Also, the whole bit where it's kind of a exposition device to get them to be able to describe all the cool stuff in the tank, all the high tech
Yeah.
stuff. Where what's her name? Is it O'Hara?
Yeah.
Yeah, Scarlet.
Because because she's got red hair, of course.
Right.
I did like her point about, like it's just a big useful tool. It's, I don't know why you guys get all so excited about this equipment, this large equipment. But at one point she's just like, engines are boring to me. And I'm just like, oh God.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just
like she
Yeah.
was totally dead on, and then they had to give her some throwaway line that would kind of invalidate her a little bit.
Yeah. Engines are, where can I, it's kind of funny, but where can I plug in a Pac-Man cartridge?
Yeah.
Yeah, like she plays video games, like that's a running thing apparently.
It's like, you're still a military person. Come on. But engines are boring to me. I mean,
But
That's
like
fine, but
the funny thing is the lead-in was like the best tanks are camouflaged and you can't see them coming, and they do the job kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, she's
Yeah.
dead on, and then she follows up with engines are boring to me.
yeah, and it's just that it puts such a tone in it. Engines are boring to me. Like, it almost puts that tone in my head. I'm like, oh, they were doing so well.
Right.
Mhm.
And she's the one that trains the Joes too. Like she's a
Uh-huh.
legit she's legit, but yeah, there's some regrettable dialogue that she is forced to say because she's a skirt.
There is some regrettable dialogue occasionally.
Mm.
Most of it's not great. Some of it is great, like the Snake Eyes. When it's cool, it's cool. There's some pretty like clunky stuff though.
Yeah, there is.
Melanie,
Yeah.
what's your least favorite part of this?
My least favorite part?
Because I kind of expected you to hate it, and you didn't. You don't seem like you hated it.
I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would.
That's good.
So there you go. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't great, but not even close to as bad as I thought it was going to be. So there's that. My least favorite part. I don't know. The way that the bad guys can magically get there and
Yeah, it did get pretty absurd.
and how did they scan the freaking robot with like chemical scans and they still couldn't find whatever it was that made that hand start moving? It's just ridiculousness that doesn't make sense.
And also, if they can't get a radio signal out,
Mm-hmm.
they can't get a radio signal into the robot to activate it.
They couldn't. They didn't.
It was like on a
did
timer
it
or something. Like
Oh, was it on a timer?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
But if you don't know where the command center is, how would you have any frame of reference for how long that robot needs to be dormant, I guess?
Also, if you don't know where the command center is, how did you know to intercept the mail guy from the command center to the airport?
Right.
I'm sorry.
And your top secret crack commando unit. I mean, like, this harkens back to my future prediction, but you're going to put it right under a place where we're going to have like it's so secret, but they can smell the breakfast they're cooking.
Several floors down.
Yeah. We're like, oh man, I swear I could smell breakfast. And then when the robot does fall down like an elevator shaft, like several floors below, they're like, what was that? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They're just like
ridiculous.
standing over a grate at one point. Like, oh my God.
Also, it's clearly not shielded that well even if it was a small spider-sized robot, if a robot can climb out of a grate out top.
Yeah.
Then you're probably not really sealed.
Why didn't they just start with the spider-sized robots and let it escape? Cobra is dumb.
Yeah.
That is dumb.
That is dumb. Very dumb.
Like, that was their best strategy, really, and they waited to the end?
Well, maybe they just want to try and take some people out on the way.
I guess. Oh, that sounds like the hubris of Cobra right there.
The robot one and the tank one felt definitely the most Saturday morning.
My least favorite thing was where they kept telling us about how good the sound system was, and so, like, they have no ammo. This is a tank that can literally just run things over and hide under a lake, I guess. But without ammo, their big strategy is to make a cannon noise, and that's apparently good enough. Apparently, Breaker's only skill is not blowing bubbles; it's also making realistic tank noises, so that you can fool the bad guys into thinking they've been fired upon. Although, like, a real tank blast would be pretty obvious.
But his bubblegum is strong.
Clearly.
What I did like, though, and this was in the tank episode, when they go to give the message to the Cobra Commander, then he's setting up the little cutouts of the people up on the stage like he's going to do a photo shoot. That was my favorite part.
That's so, like, Dr. Evil awesome.
Yeah, he's doing target practice on realistic cutouts of these. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, I feel like it really could have embraced. I mean, I guess it's pretty cheesy and campy throughout, but I really wish it would have embraced the camp a bit more. More of the Snake Eyes style cool, and less of the, like, cool because they're military guys. Like, just make them all bad. Just make them all awesome. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Can't make them all bad.
You know what I mean?
Bad butts.
Yes.
Well, even that Eskimo was pretty bad.
Oh, yeah, he was.
He might have been one of my favorite characters, actually, if we're talking about favorite stuff. Like, I kind of dug how they made him just like this free agent that totally owned the Joes. You know, like
yeah, he did.
The Joes didn't prevail until they worked with him.
Yeah, even Snake Eyes, he got duped.
Oh, he was that's what I'm saying. More like that, because that guy was awesome. They made him super cool, and even the part where I was, like, questioning it, because they even say, like, he never gives away, like, he never compromises the mission, never gives away the secrets. And as soon as they come across him, he tells them the plan. And I'm like, wait a second, what happened to he never gives away? And then I look at the next panel, and one of the Joes is like, I thought you never gave away the secret. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. They're aware of it. Yeah. And they address it right there. So, yeah, I don't know. I like that story. I thought that was pretty good.
Right. The first two or three were really pretty good, because the first one was like some kind of diplomat or something that gets held hostage, and we get a pretty good introduction to every major G.I. Joe and Cobra character. Like, the Baroness shows up in that first issue.
The Cobra Commander has some weird backwards, I think this is a secret plan inside of my secret plan thing that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But other than that, yeah, it was okay.
Well, we've got some friends of the show that have opinions, right?
We do.
Letters page. Does it have a thing?
Hey, if you want to contact the show, you can always send us letters to letters@grawlixpodcast.com. Another way to get a hold of us is that you could, record a quick voice clip and also send it to that email address, or you can shoot us a voicemail to 559-426-6427, or if it's easier to remember, 5594-COMICS.
Jesse put a call out for input on G.I. Joe specifically, so that's what we're going to start with. We got an email from friend of the show, Ben Kruger, who has been on the show before.
Yeah, we had him on a Grawlix Nights because I was out there in Waterloo, Iowa, and Yeah,
we didn't talk to him, in case you're wondering, Melanie.
No,
but you do have an action figure of him in your house.
I do have an action figure of him in the house, right here, in fact.
Hey, how's it going, tiniest Danny O'Manny?
Is that what he looks like?
Yeah, kind of.
What's wrong with his face?
Maybe a little less rugged, but...
Yeah, there's like crap all over his face or something.
Well, he's been around. Is there?
Yeah, man, he's a martial arts guru.
He's been around a little bit.
Okay.
He's gotten into some fights.
That looks more like
perhaps some reconstructive surgery.
Burn scars or something. I don't know.
He's a warrior.
Good job, guys. Then
straight up legit.
Warriors don't stay pretty forever.
Yeah, look at Mickey Rourke.
Yeah. So, Ben writes in, the G.I. Joe comics were amazing growing up. Honestly, even though the comics were mainly there to promote the toys, the stories were pretty legit for a kid my age. I would have to say that the Storm Shadow Snake Eyes saga, where Storm Shadow defected from Cobra and then was believed to be killed by the Baroness, was some of my favorite stuff ever. I'm not sure if that was Larry Hama or not. Larry Hama, I can't help but say the name that way, but Larry Hama is a super enjoyable writer, and I believe he wrote Nth Man, the Ultimate Ninja, and the Wolf Pack, both of which are super fun. Bottom line, G.I. Joe and Larry Hama are amazing.
I'm curious about this now. Did he write all those things? Probably.
We're questioning you, Ben. No.
Why would I? I don't know. I feel like there's no reason to.
The only thing we would really need to question is if he wrote the Snake Eyes and the Shadow Man one. And other than that, we trust you.
Makes sense that he would have, though, because he wrote the Storm Shadow spinoff. So clearly Snake Eyes was his boy. That's my boy.
Oh, yeah. I could tell that right away.
Yeah.
That's one thing we didn't. Okay, so we could have got more into it, but we didn't get into any of the ongoing stories. Honestly, I'm fine with that because I can appreciate the quality that is there, and I can appreciate the nostalgia factor this has for people to have something as a property, comic, cartoons, whatever, as a kid, and especially if some of it's actually not that bad. Because a lot of times you'll go back and revisit some things that you enjoyed when you were a kid, and you're like, wow, this is terrible.
Yeah.
Which is often the case with 80s cartoon and toy-based, which is pretty much all the toys, all the stuff in the 80s was toy-based, product. So I appreciate that. And not to diminish that, one thing we didn't get to, would you recommend this? And I'm not saying I wouldn't recommend it, but I would not keep reading this. So
yeah.
Sorry, Ben, I'm not trying to stomp on your letter. Good letter, Ben. By the way, I would not read this. No, this isn't. It's just not my speed.
Me as well. I did think it was much better than I thought it was going to be, but it's not something that I feel interested in general.
Would I recommend this? To anybody that already kind of had a love for the G.I. Joe property in that time. Obviously, that's who this is written for.
If you grew up with the toys, those ridiculously expensive, huge air carrier toy sets with
the flag
40
aircraft
million
carrier,
little action figures where the rubber band would break inside of them and they'd fall in half, and
Did you guys watch? Was it The Toys That Made Us? Have you seen the G.I. Joe episode?
I have not.
It's a pretty good episode. So I mean, I would recommend that. I would not recommend any of the G.I. Joe movies, the live action ones, anyways.
They have movies.
I would actually recommend the cartoon
Fairly
movies before I would recommend those.
Fairly modern ones, yeah.
Yeah, one of them even had The Rock and Bruce Willis.
Well, that right there should tell you. If it's got The Rock in it.
Yeah. But I mean, Mr. Die Hard.
But he's so likable. The Rock is, not Bruce Willis.
Is he?
He's charismatic. He's charisma in human form.
Yeah, right.
He just doesn't pick good movies.
They decided to go with Will Smith for the genie on Aladdin. I think they missed the boat. Should have been The Rock.
He actually might have been okay at doing a genie.
I mean, he was in Moana. He played Maui. I think he's practically the genie in that.
He's over the top in too many things that don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not put him in something that does need it?
Where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith's the genie in Aladdin.
That doesn't sound good to me.
I don't know why. I've been well over Will Smith for a long time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and part of it, I think, is just the attitude that I feel from the entire Smith clan.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had another comment, Jesse. I don't have that comment.
I threw it out there on Facebook as well. And interestingly enough, we kind of bagged on issue 5, Thanks for the Memories, but we had Kaylin commented on my post that issue 5 is one of her favorites.
Oh, well, some people like crap.
Well, listen,
it's super campy. I mean, that's
exactly it.
The image that I posted for our call out was that scene with General Flag facing down Cobra Commander, and he's totally hiding behind Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
I was like, this is pretty much the epitome of over the top in this issue here. In case you forgot that Cobra Commander's a bad guy, here you go.
So Shredder is just like a ripoff of Cobra Commander.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
With thigh holes.
Only
Shredder's way cooler.
Yeah. Shredder's more straight up ninja, whereas Cobra Commander is kind of like is he supposed to be almost Russian? Because like his uniform implies that, and man, the Red Scare is strong in this stuff.
Yeah, that's why that one issue I was like, they're fighting the Cobra guys again, but they weren't. They were fighting the Russians, but they're so intertwined. It seems to me that I thought it was. I don't know.
Do you think maybe the Red Scare died down like for too long, and suddenly they're like, you know what, we need to stoke this up.
You know what kids these days need more of? McCarthyism.
Yeah, and that's kind of where that's how our current situation started.
No.
It's part of a larger plan.
No.
Yeah.
A kind of frivolous, pointless plan, but a plan. No.
It's actually Cobra. It's all Cobra.
Actually, I do appreciate just this like nondescript, generic, non-specific nation terrorist organization stand-in, you know?
Wait a minute.
It's pretty smart.
What if Snake Eyes is Cobra Commander? Snake Eyes, Cobra, come on. And they
what
both
if Snake
always
Eyes
wear a
is
mask.
Putin?
Maybe.
Too much? Too soon?
I don't know about too soon. Maybe too much.
Yeah.
That's why his reaction was like his face.
Mm-hmm.
It's Putin. Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of the Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. For more Grawlix Podcast, visit grawlixpodcast.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/grawlixpodcast, or follow us on Twitter at Grawlix Podcast. We're also everywhere. All the time. All at once.